this
Live.
morning.
Now, the rock star.
That's what they call me.
Welcome to The Pursuit. This is actually episode 5, but I don't think I've done one in like 2 years. So, this is the start of a new leaf with this podcast. This is a business podcast where I like to talk to local business owners and just find out how they got started, find out what drives them, and find out, where they're going next and what they have plans for the future. So, this week, we'll call it week 1, even though it's episode 5, is
Yeah.
Flower Girl ATL, Katie Lyman. She's one of the coaches at Oxford. I saw her this morning coaching. And just I've known you now 12 years potentially, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Something like that. We've known
It's
each other a
time.
long time.
Yeah.
We didn't
Long
see each
time.
other for about 8 of them in between, but
Yeah.
finally we're back together and both pursuing what makes
Yep.
us happy. And yeah, it's great. So,
Yeah.
welcome to the pursuit. So, I want to start it off talking about your dreams. So, for me, the biggest thing is I've been driven my whole life with bigger goals and bigger dreams and bigger ambitions, right? Wanting more for myself. And I traced that dream all the way back to wanting to be a professional athlete, right? That's what drove me from a young age. And that pursuit and that failure of achieving that dream is what leads me to everything that I have now. And I'm a big believer in dreaming big, aiming for the stars, and wherever you end up is where you were supposed to be, right? And on that pursuit is where you find your happiness and your joy, and you don't want to miss that stuff. So I just want to take you back to what your dreams were. Like, if you could
Oh
look as
man.
like an 8, 9, 10-year old, where would that person have thought, what are you now, 32, 31? Where would
A
they thought, what
little
would they have
more.
thought that
Just a little.
31-year-old would be?
Add 10 and we're good. Yeah. So that's a great question because I think as athletes, a lot of us very similarly, like you wanted to go pro. Like my goal from a very, very young age was to go to the Olympics. That's all I wanted. Like I loved the Olympics. I didn't know what it was going to be in. But I was just, the kid that would set up like a rollerblade course across the street around the block, like jumping shit because I thought that I would someday be in the Olympics for rollerblading. It could be anything. Um, and then it became more seriously running when I got to high school and college. But that was my dream. Yeah, as a
Mhm.
kid, it was always my dream.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because I'm the same. It ended up being basketball at like 11 years old, but I thought I was a professional as like a 6, 7-year old when I was playing soccer,
Hmm.
right? We had black and white stripes. So I would watch Newcastle play, and I was one of them players, right? My home team was
Yeah.
Sheffield Wednesday, but we wore the same color as Newcastle. So I was like, oh, I play for New. When I was playing on a Sunday, I wasn't playing for my local team. I was a pro, right? Then
Hmm.
I started
Hmm.
skating a little bit, and I used to watch the X Games, and I was like, I'm going to be one of them. It was never for me just like I'm just doing this. I was always I I'd say I turned pro at like 7 or 8 years old. I just didn't know what it was going to be in,
Yep.
right? It wasn't going to be a doctor. It wasn't going to be it
No.
was going to be some form of athlete, right? Like I was
Yeah.
going to be a
Yeah.
professional athlete from the first time I saw a professional sport. So that's cool that you
It's
can
in
tie
you.
that back
Yeah.
to the Olympics. Do you remember seeing the Olympics for the first time, or like what was it about where you grew up that it was focused on the Olympics?
I mean, my parents are like hardcore. I wouldn't necessarily say athletes, but my dad was doing, quarter mile workouts when I was a kid. We'd go out to the track. I was always riding my bike with my mom. And then just the Olympics were a part of our lives, right? Like we every 4 years, I mean, my parents would just really spend a lot of time making sure that we watched the swimming. So then we all went and swam. We'd watch the gymnastics. I was kicked out of gymnastics, but my sister did really well, right? And there were we just were always, I mean, Team USA, it was always a big part of our lives. I
Mm,
just can't, I don't remember the first time I saw it, but I think it was probably so young that it just was a part of our lives. And I
Yeah.
was going to say, I thought I was going to be a professional basketball player for a while after I watched The Pistol. And I became like a dribbling fiend. Like I loved it. So I did all the things he did in the movie. It were panned out till I was like 15 and then 5'4". But and I was just not tall enough. I mean, that's not that that matters, but basketball was not going to be my thing. But I
Mhm.
loved it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is another one that I really believed like
Yeah.
that was going to be it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool, right? Because you tie it back to who I think people you look up to appreciate, right? So
Hmm.
the Olympics comes on every 4 years, and everyone sits around and they appreciate these people and the hard work and the dedication they've put in. And that, I think that was always a topic of conversation in my house, was just how hard it is to get to the Olympics, how hard it is to be a professional athlete, and just you appreciate the amount of work that these people are doing to get there. Not that it's,
Hmm.
you know, the only way to achieve things. I just think it's just so clear and obvious. And as a kid, you can
Hmm.
instantly relate to it, right? Like there's a
Yep.
lot of places in the world where you don't really understand how an entrepreneur gives. You don't get to see the work because it's not sweat. You know what I mean? Like it's not
Hmm.
directly in your face. A lot of these
Hmm.
stories, when you see the Olympics, they go and follow them in a training camp, and you see like, and they talk about sacrifice and hard work and dedication. And I think it's such an easy lesson that
Yeah.
I remember learning early on, that like if I train hard and get up early and sacrifice some of these things, I'm gonna be successful at this thing. And it's such an
Hmm.
easy path. Whereas for me, like school didn't really make much sense, and like other jobs didn't really add up. Like I didn't understand why people would go and sit in an office, but I understood why you get up and go to the track. And I understood why you play really hard at sports, because the reward is that you're a professional athlete. You get to go out on the field and
Yeah.
people cheer for you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And at a young age, I mean, I think that I thrive in a black and white environment. And I think when you're young, it only hurts you later on in life when you live in black and white, when your body can't do the things it used to do. But as a young kid, like watching those Olympians win, I started getting that feeling of like, oh, that pride and that like just seeing all that hard work come, to fruition. So winning became a huge thing for me, right? I
Mhm.
knew I could win on the soccer field. I knew I could win on the track. I'd go to school. I didn't necessarily care about I mean, I cared about grades. I did fine, but my focus for winning was athletic.
Mhm.
Um, Winning with friends, that's a very gray area. I didn't like it because it was like, I don't know, but I could win. And like that for me, I mean, that honestly has carried me through all my endeavors, whether it was corporate business now, like winning,
Yeah.
just win.
And I
That's
think
it.
that's hard to see. We'll get into it, but it's hard to see in just big corporations for me, right? Like I can't relate
Hmm.
them two things together very well. But as soon as I found, and I only found like being a business owner at like 26 or 27. And when I say I wish I would have known at 16, 17 that you can start your own thing. And
Hmm.
somebody started their own thing. Some like Nike started with one shoe and one guy. Like you just don't think of it like that when you grow up in a world with all these big brands and they're so established, and potentially no one in your family is an entrepreneur and has started something. You don't know that that could be you, right? But being an athlete, all these people are mostly working class, or they're someone down the
Hmm.
street, or someone. It doesn't matter what school they came from. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And I hope that
Yeah.
entrepreneurship becomes more like that, and business ownership becomes more like that. That even as I got to like 25, 26, I kept looking like I need a big brand to come and sponsor my thing. And people were like, no,
Yeah.
you make the t-shirt. Put your name on it. Don't
Yeah.
you don't need it to be this company. You know what I mean? And like it took a while for me to separate that and understand that you can create whatever life you want, and you can create whatever business. It just starts with you know? And
Yeah.
it's amazing we don't tie that back to sport so much, that like you can go and
Oh
do
yeah.
it. All you have to do is, I think why I fell in love with basketball so much was I didn't need anybody else. I could just have a ball and a hoop and I could work out as long as I wanted. You know, some
Hmm.
of the sports you need other people to be able to practice. Basketball was just me and a hoop and hours of time, you know, like, and
Yeah.
then when you find entrepreneurship, you're like, oh yeah, it's the same. You can win. Like you can set a path for yourself, and it's how hard you work is what you're gonna get back. You know, so
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So how do
And
you
then it
tie
becomes, yeah,
your
smarter.
sorry, go ahead. How do you tie your sports then back to where you're at now?
Well, interesting that you say that. Like, so I grew up with two entrepreneurial parents, that while corporate, both did corporate stuff, they also were entrepreneurs on the side. Um, when I graduated from college, I had been done running for a couple years. My body just couldn't do it really anymore the way it used to. And I would, in my mind, I was like, well, I can't go work at a desk. Like, that's just not who I am. Um, so I had a Tahoe, a Chevy Tahoe, a rake, and
Mhm,
like a bucket, and I went and started raking leaves for people. And
mhm,
then I realized I want to plant flowers, right? And so this is all in Lubbock, Texas. And so I started Flower Girl Lubbock, you know, Lubbock Flower. I don't remember what I called it. Um, but I started that in 2007, right? Officially. I went and got a
mhm.
job at a nursery. I worked there part time. I learned about flowers. And by 2010, I had a crew of like 4 or 5 people. We were all
Oh wow.
out working all season long, and we had a full year's worth of work. And then my life kind of fell apart, my personal life, and it was time for me to move back to Colorado. Um, and so I did that, and it wasn't really a good time for me to jump into starting another business. I needed some stability.
Mm,
And so that's when I went back into corporate, or I went into corporate first time. I worked in retail management. I worked at enterprise and then retail management for Target. That's how I got here. Um, and yeah, and then in 2020, after 7 years at Target, I couldn't do it anymore. You
mm,
can't win. You can't win. There's no. I was on the edge of just. It would become very unhealthy because the bar was changing constantly, and there were so much politics involved in all of it that I just like I felt defeated all the time. And the pandemic showed up, and it was like, okay, it's time, which no one was quitting their corporate jobs. It was supposed to be a time for you to just like coast.
mm,
Not for me. I left in May of 2020, and I went home to talk to my parents and spend some time with them. And I thought they were going to say, "Hey, let's get your resume together. Let's
hmm,
get back out there." And both of them said one morning we were sitting having coffee, while they sat in bed, and they said, "Katie, you got to do Flower Girl." They're like,
mm.
"That's what you love. That's what you want to do. Like, let's do it." And so we spent that whole week I was home just writing up business plans, doing all that. It was a blast. And so that's how I got back into it. And I equate my sports in the sense that like I never doubted for a second that I can do this.
Mm,
Now how well I do, or but I when I was a high schooler watching Steve Prefontaine, all those Steve Prefontaine movies, I was like, that's me. I'm doing that. I never doubted I could go to the Olympics until they told me I can't run anymore. Which isn't true. I can still run. It's just not the same. Um, I just never doubted. I went out, got clients, and it was slow, but then it picked up, and I just never was afraid to
mm.
go for it. Like, what do
Yeah.
I, and then, and now as you and I discuss things more often, I think that winning is still in me, right? But I kind of look at it as a day-to-day thing. Did I win today? Did I win this week? Did I win this month? Now I've got to be looking at, how am I going to win 5 years from now? How am I going to win 10 years from now? Because I've gotten okay at winning day to day. But if I really want to take that next level win, like that changes, right? And that's something in sports that I've actually really struggled with. So I'm a little nervous about what it looks like setting a goal,
Mm.
right? And actually going through the whole process of achieving it. Um, wins and losses, right? So yeah, I
Yeah,
hope
it's
that
good.
answers your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's like a Hollywood story, right? Like you gave me the summary of it, and in the summary of it, it sounds amazing, right? You go, right out of college, I knew what I wanted to do and I started doing it. But in all them things, you didn't say like, you never really do you talk about the pain of the Olympics being pretty much taken away, right? You're not running anymore. Like your whole identity is gone.
It's
You
gone.
go from
Yeah.
that to being flower girl, and you probably threw your whole life and your identity into something new, right? Like that was it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
looking back on these things and just seeing like you're a kid, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're a kid, but you throw yourself into things fully 100%.
Hmm.
Just like that was me, right? Basketball, I was all in. Like
Hmm.
I was up every day and I was shooting thousands of shots. That was what I was going to do until somebody told me I couldn't do it. Same with you. And then you keep going and you keep pushing and you just keep working. All you knew was hard work, right? From running, you know
Yeah.
that you work hard. You started Flower Girl and you were just working,
Yep.
right? 2007, like what we're talking like 13 years ago until you started, but probably like 18 years ago, you were just going.
Yeah. It's a long time.
And then you say, my life fell apart and I moved to Colorado. And you just say it like flippant, like it's nothing. It's just one of the bumps now. But two times feels like your dream got crushed in there, right? It
Yeah.
was the dream of going to the Olympics. Then it's you started this business that's doing really well, gone. And like
Yeah.
you've started over twice. And then this is the third time you're starting over, right? Like
Yeah.
you were going to be a professional athlete. Then you're a business owner. Flower Girl's flying. Now you're in corporate, selling your soul, getting up every day,
Hmm.
working your ass off, put on them corduroy pants or whatever you have to do to wear it. What is it?
Red and khaki.
The
Red
red
and
and khaki.
khaki.
And
Ugh.
13 years later, you decide that you're going to go for it again. And you just said it like the courage to go again in 2020 when the world was shutting down. You
It's
quit
insane.
a corporate job to back yourself. Why would you do that? Because I know you're probably still to this day, 4 years later, coming up on five, you're probably not making as much money
No.
that you were making at
Never.
Target. You probably don't get the same healthcare benefits that you got at Target. You
Mm-mm.
probably don't get the vacation time that you got at Target. You definitely work longer hours than you worked at Target.
Actually, no, I don't.
Okay,
Actually,
that's
no.
good.
That was like 60 hours a week. That was insane.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
hour
there's
to
one
hour, yeah.
benefit.
So,
There's one
but
benefit.
that's
You're
one
working more
benefit.
for life.
Let's give it the one. Yeah, no, I
But
don't
like,
work
how
as
do you
many
do that?
there.
Because you made it sound simple, right? But
Yeah,
anybody that's listening to
yeah.
this that doesn't have a business, what you just described is failing, failing, finding something stable, probably doing really well in corporate, right?
Hmm.
I imagine you were
Hmm.
like one of the people that, what do they say? Like, you're on track, whatever they keep telling you, right?
Yeah,
You're on track
yeah.
for something. And you're like, when? You will never find out, but we'll let you know.
You will never. Yeah, we'll keep you at the same store for 7 years, and you'll never know what's going to happen. But you're
But
on your way.
you're on your way. Yeah. Whatever they
Oh
say in the
God.
meetings. We'll have a meeting about it next
Yeah.
week. So how do you do that? Like you made it sound so beautiful and simple and you articulated it so well that like, but in the world's told you
Oh,
twice that you shouldn't be doing this shit, right? You should just be working in corporate America like everybody else. So why do you think you should go and do this?
I mean, look, I'm not gonna. I didn't leave Target with the intention of starting something. I left Target because my mental health, for the first time in my life, like became a priority over winning.
Mhm.
Right? I was in a place where it had become extremely unhealthy for me to continue working those hours. The expectations, the stress had gotten to a point where I was not. It was not tenable for me to continue living healthy, right? Um, and so I remember leaving the store one day and sitting in my car and calling my parents and just being like, I'm done. My parents and I are really close, and I just had to tell them, like, I can't, I'm not, I don't know how many days I can make it more, right? This is really, really pushing me. Um, and so that's when I just made that decision. I mean, it without any plans other than I have to take care of me. And then when we talked about, going forward, what am I going to do? I would get this insane pit in my stomach when I would think about going back to corporate.
Mm.
But I'd get really excited about starting up Flower Girl again or starting up
Mhm.
something of my own because yeah, I love control. Don't get me wrong, and that's a big part of it. I am my own boss. No one is saying you're going to get that, like, hey, someday you're going to get that job. No, I make my job. I get to do what I want to do. I make it happen.
Mhm.
Um I love that control. But there is also like I don't think everybody's like this, but I think you're like this and I think a lot of entrepreneurs are like this. It's just fun.
Mm.
The development, the going and getting it, being an expert at something
Mhm.
that other people aren't. And like there's so much joy in it. I don't know, it made me really excited. I was I scared? Absolutely. Well, no, I don't get scared about it. I still to this day. Like, am I exhausted? Am I ready for some new stuff? Yeah. I'm not scared. I watched my parents do it for years, right?
Yeah.
So,
So what was your role? What were you in Target? So you'd worked your way up, right? I imagine in that time
yeah.
to be pretty high.
So in those 8 years, I was the I went from guest services manager, which is like an
Mhm.
assistant manager, to the interim store manager at Edgewood, which is the second highest sales volume Target in the Southeast,
Mm.
next to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
Um, and I was, right, just as I was about to leave, our new store manager had come in. And that was really difficult for me. That was a difficult thing when you are interim and then, but I understand like they were going to send me somewhere else to become a store director. That's great.
Mhm.
But I was just done. I was done.
Yeah. What was the plan if you would have stayed? Where would you have ended up? Like, what was the next rung on that ladder?
I was interim store director at Edgewood, and then I would have become a store director at one of the other stores, potentially like
Yeah. And then what
Noonan,
goes
something
above that?
down.
What goes above that?
Uh, After that, it would have been a district director,
Mhm.
and then after that, it would have been regional.
Okay.
I, I,
And I mean, your personality, that's the only choice. You would have been working towards them things, right? Like
oh yeah,
it would have been
always.
whatever's
There
next.
always had to be a next level. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. And I look at people that work in different jobs and have an idea for starting a business. I talk to a lot of people that everybody has an idea for a business, right? But doing it is
yeah.
completely different. And I would say look at the people that have the jobs that you're working towards and decide if that's the path that you want, right? So look up
Hmm.
the chain and look at the life these people have. Don't look at the money that they've got. Don't look at the security that they've got. Look at the life that they have and decide if that's what life you want, right? And then if you do, you keep going for it. But if you have another idea and your idea was to go from that, put in all that time, becoming that director potentially of a store, to throwing your tools in the back of a pickup truck and driving around, right? And like that's not an easy decision to make. Like when
No.
Lauren quit her job to come and work at Oxford, like the conversation I had to have with her was, you've worked all through college to have this job title that you have now. And you're going to become a fitness coach. Yes, we own the business, but you'll have to tell people you're a fitness coach, right? And they're going to roll their eyes and they're going to, you know what I mean? When you say, I'm a senior director or whatever, I can't even remember what she was, they go, oh, fancy. You know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
get to like fly on airplanes all over the country and go and do all this stuff that you hate. But you get to say them words and people have a reaction to it, right? When you say that I own a
Mhm.
gym, you're going to have to deal with whatever goes into their mind and the judgments they put on you, right?
Yeah.
That's a reality that you had to face at not 21 anymore. That's not difficult, right? You skipped past it like it was easy, I think. But I think that's something that a lot of people will struggle with.
Yeah. I think so. I don't wanna skip past it as if it's easy. It's not. I I will admit there were multiple therapy sessions, and not talking to other people, I didn't really care what other people thought. I actually think it sounds cooler to start your own business than to work for Target as a store director. But if you look at the money, or things like that, and I think the hardest thing, and there was a lot of therapy about it after the fact, was I the sense of losing. I didn't
Hmm.
win, right? I didn't reach the top. Second,
Yeah.
I didn't really feel that way when the Flower Girl ended the first time. It was a situation that where I had to make changes. Um, but when I left Target, it was a sense of failure,
Hmm.
and that broke my heart. And so that's where a lot of the difficulty came, was just making that decision to say I'm willing to not win. Um, and then, you know, deciding what was next after that. But that was, yeah, by far the most difficult part for me was, and kind of the same with running, even though I couldn't do it anymore. Like I could have gone into cycling and tried to become a pro and do all those things, but I was pretty devastated. Your identity gets taken away from you. You're just like, I don't know what to do next. Um, and so, yeah, that was hard, not winning. Um, and so, yeah, and I look at it a little differently now. Um, just in that, like, again, it was a choice made for my health, but man, we like to win, right? I love
Mm.
winning.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big thing for me was being in America at like 20, 21, 22 when I left college. I signed a professional contract in Arizona. And while I was there, in order to survive, I mean, it was a minor league team. So I was a landscaper, a house painter, a grave digger, um, all jobs that, had to be cash. We won't say why, just we'll just know that they had to be cash, right? And
Mhm.
I didn't care because I was a professional basketball player. You know what I mean? So then when I get to the end of my basketball career, I don't make it to where I want to go. And I don't, you know, I'm not this professional athlete I thought I was going to be from being 10 years old. To then
Mhm.
accept opening other businesses and becoming an entrepreneur and opening a gym and doing all that stuff, like my life directly ties back. I'm a professional athlete every day. I just pay myself to work out. I was thinking somebody else was going to do it. And then now I've started to realize that like everything I wish I would have known, that you can be your own business, right?
Mhm,
Don't wait for
mhm,
someone else to give you these opportunities. Go and make it for yourself, right? Everyone's sitting
yeah,
waiting for somebody else to come along and hand them the keys to something or like make them a professional athlete. Like if you want it, just go and take it, right? Create your own league, create your own thing. If that's what you want to
mhm,
do, just go and get it. And like that's something I don't think we talk about enough, right? Like it's there for you. Don't wait for someone else. And I think we spend so much time waiting for that to happen. I'm a professional athlete. I've been a professional athlete for 10 years now. I work out twice a day, most days. And I just work to pay myself to do that. And
yeah,
obviously now I'm getting to the point where I don't want to work out as much and I want to do business stuff more and I want to win that way. But it's a change of identity, right? Which is like you at some point now are starting to deal with the reality that like Flower Girl's not a hobby anymore, right? It's now
No.
something that you want to turn into a business. And the realities of that mean that you can't just be the hard working, hustle, grind worker that you used to be, right? Like for me,
Yeah.
if I look back over the last my whole basketball career, like I wasn't the best player, but I was the hardest working in every team, every room, every meeting room, every practice, every skill session. I was the hardest working one. That helps you start a business, but it
Yep.
doesn't help you continue a business, right? And like that's what we talk about a lot. That's what you're learning. You can't just keep outworking the business and think it's going to be where you want it to be, right?
Mhm. Mhm. And yeah, you can't. And just to kind of circle back a little bit on what you said earlier, like if you're thinking about, if you're considering, or you're in a place where you tell in your mind, there's a voice that says, there's no way I could do it. Find a cheerleader. Find someone like Aunt and I talk about business a lot, and it has, no joke, like I'm inspired, right? And we just talk about our stuff. It's not like really intense businessy. Like it's just talking about where we're at and our experiences. If you're interested, find an entrepreneur and just chat, because
Mm-hmm.
what the inspiration and like the like, I guess the partnership, or just feeling like you're not alone in it, is such a big deal.
Yeah.
That I think you will feel so much more empowered to start something when you surround yourself with people, or with just someone.
Well, you
And
have to,
we're
right?
everywhere.
But you don't
Like,
really have a
yeah.
choice because everybody that isn't in entrepreneurship or hasn't started a business, and it's not that it's just that they don't know. It's not that
Mhm.
they like like I don't know what they do every day. I don't understand that corporate world. Like I can't do it. I don't get it. They don't know what it's like to do this. So like you have to talk to someone who is doing it. Like not somebody who, you know, has a business but somebody else owns it and they're running it. That's no, you have to know someone that's from nothing or started it from scratch or in the day to day of struggling with the same things that you're struggling with. You have to be around someone like that because only they know that like you have to keep going and you have to keep pushing. You can't back off when it gets hard and you can't like,
Mm-mm.
oh, take care of yourself this week. Like I don't have that choice this week because rent's due and the mortgage is due and like I can't do that this week. You know what I mean? There's no mental
Yeah.
health week, right? It's like
Nope.
find spaces in there, but go and talk to other people who are in the same and you realize you're not on your own. Like you said, is one of the keys to the whole thing is just realizing that you're not on your own in this. And there's other people doing that. And it's very isolating because 99% of people are
Oh
not
man.
doing it. Right.
Mhm.
And the biggest
Yeah.
weakness that we have, or that I have, and I think you probably have, is going and trying doing it all on your own.
I mean, there's a reason why I was just telling Marina this yesterday, that since like I started opening up with people more about my business in the last few months, it has grown significantly. And
Mm-hmm.
all I've done is talk about it a little bit more.
Mm,
Been more open-minded to some changes, right?
yeah.
I haven't done anything drastic, but it's just almost like this idea of being willing to put yourself out there and talk to other entrepreneurs, and um you know, not being afraid of what they're going to say when they see it. Uh it's been huge. Like
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. And if you need to reinvent yourself, start a business. It's easy. It's not easy.
What do you think your biggest weakness is as an entrepreneur now or a business owner?
um you know Keeping my idea of winning too small. I
Mm-hmm.
know that sounds like one of those interview answers, but it's true. Like I will keep my idea of winning as, okay, we got a couple jobs in November and we're good. No, like my idea of winning is planning for next spring,
Hmm.
right? And being ready to launch a bunch of stuff in 2025. That is winning, right? So instead of just acting like, that's my biggest weakness, is falling back on these ideas that, okay, I just got to find work for this week, which I do, but that's not the big stuff.
Hmm.
The big stuff is really pushing forward, and so I think that's probably my biggest struggle. And honestly, this is probably the biggest, is balance. I'm very bad at it. I could work all the time.
Yeah.
Family doesn't really allow. I've got to find more balance.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes an obsession, right? And like as much as
Hmm.
that is a weakness, it's also the only thing that gets it off the ground. I think. Like,
Yeah,
I don't think it's unhealthy at first. It's just unhealthy if 10 years later you're still doing the same jobs that you started doing, or and
yeah,
I personally think that that comes from fear, right?
yeah.
Is thinking too small and not replacing yourself is one of the fears. But that's the scariest thing, is when you go into a business and you see an owner that's completely burnt out and you feel the business is burnt out, you know?
Yeah.
And what is it they say in the E Myth? Um, the scariest thing is a adolescent business that survives,
Yep.
right? So like a business that is in the early phases exciting, you see that it's exciting. Maybe they don't have everything together, but you know that they're working their ass off. But then
Yeah.
one that like is just surviving and has just survived for 10 years, you can feel that when you go in, right? Like, and it's little things. The bathrooms are a mess and they're not stocked, and they're like, you just, the floors are sticky, and you know what I mean? You just feel it. And it's like something's
Yeah.
the dream's dead now, but the business is still alive. And I think that's one of my biggest fears when I talk to entrepreneurs, is that they get stuck there and they stop
Hmm.
dreaming, because 4 years in, 5 years in, 6 years in, you can stop dreaming, and you don't want to do that. That dream's got to still be alive, which is why you've got to be around entrepreneurs that are doing the same.
Yep. Yep. I agree.
So goals for the future. So the future of Flower Girl, we're
Mm.
4 years coming up on 5 years in, right? At this point,
Yep.
what do the
Yep.
next 5 years look like?
I mean, the next 5 years looks like, beginning to create more dedicated roles, more, um, like solidifying our, service offerings. And that's actually the next 6 months, right? Like it's the next 5 years just looks like creating a business that runs uh, the same every day. We are, our values are the same, our, techniques are the same. It's creating a business that is a well-oiled machine, and
Mhm.
that I can step away from, or not be afraid when I wake up in the morning of whether it's going to go okay,
Mhm.
right? Other people are going to have the operation brain that I have, of constantly waking up and thinking, this is how we have to do the order of today. That gets to be someone else's job. I don't know what I'm going to do, um, but it'll be fun. And I can't imagine myself not being an entrepreneur. So, yeah, the next 5 years. I mean, I'm really thinking more. My brain is very in like a 2 or 3 year mode right now.
Mhm.
5 years, I can't imagine. I really
Yeah.
can't.
And what happens if you fail?
I won't. If Flower Girl failed,
Mhm.
I can't. I can't. I don't have it. I don't. I would just do something else. I. I'll. I'll coach. Like I'm not afraid. Like there will be something. I just may not pay off all this debt as fast as I planned on it.
Mhm.
But it's okay. I
Yeah.
can't imagine it failing.
Well, I think from me and you talking, the only failure is if it's still the same in 5 years, right? Like if
Yeah.
Flower
Yep.
Girl's gone, but you go all in, then we're fine, right? Like it
It's
was
not a
meant to
failure.
be. It was meant to be. Yeah.
Hmm.
And yeah, if you're still in the same place in 5 years is the only failure.
Yeah, I don't think that. I think failure has definitely changed for me. The idea of winning has changed for me a lot.
Mhm.
And when I am living a life that is based on principles and values that are mine and align with who I am, like that's all the winning I need to do. Everything else, like, so yeah, if I go all in and it fails or it doesn't, it's not open in 5 years, well, then as long as I stay true to myself, we're cool. Like
The
we do something
pursuit
else.
is the happiness,
The
right?
pursuit is the happiness. It truly is.
Awesome.
And you can have
Well,
it today. It doesn't have to be 5 years.
thank you for joining me on, we'll call it
Absolutely.
episode 5.1, I guess. But I really enjoyed listening to you, and I
Me
can't
too.
wait to follow up and have you on again and see where you're at and what you got going on. But thanks for sharing some of that with us. I think if anybody's just starting a business or like 4 or 5 years in, and also, you know, I bet there's so many people that launched a business and then it went away and they want to relaunch it, right? Like
Yeah.
if Katie's an example of do it, don't wait.
Don't give up.
And
And if you need help,
she's
let me
sitting there
know.
proudly with Flower Girl written on her chest.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Aaron. I
Katie.
appreciate it.